And I'm Lexi. Stay tuned to see what is happening in the world today.
Today you're in for a real treat. We have a special segment on how current events in Syria relate to the novel Les Mis through prostitution, poverty, the refugee crisis, and war.
Our first connection between the two is prostitution.
In Syria, many women resort to prostitution so they can make money to support their families. Poor families resort to selling their daughters and wives to men who are passing through the refugee camps. One girl named Nada, who is 19, prices her body for about $7. The daily income she makes is about $70. Many people are suffering because of the civil war and the deeply damaged economy.
How does this relate to Les Mis, you ask? Well, in the book Les Mis, the narrator explains how Cosette's mom, Fatine, is forced into prostitution in order to pay the Thénardiers for taking care of her daughter, Cosette. These two things relate because both women are selling themselves in order to support their families. And now back to you, Maya, with the second connection between Syria and Les Mis.
Our next connection between Syria and Les Mis is poverty.
Because of the war in Syria, 80% of the Syrian population plummeted into poverty. Also because of the war, 12 million Syrians lost their source of income. According to the UN Refugee Agency, nearly 1.7 million Syrian refugees registered in Jordan and Lebanon live in miserable conditions, often unable to afford the very basics, including sufficient food, clothes, and medicine. The majority are women and children who live in the margins in urban and rural areas, often in substandard accommodations rather than in refugee camps.
In the book Les Mis, Jean Valjean was released from prison after 19 years, originally being convicted for stealing a loaf of bread for his starving family. Jean Valjean is so poor, and also being a convict, is not welcome anywhere to stay and is forced to live on the streets for multiple days. Right after Jean Valjean was released from the galleys, he was trying to find a place to sleep, but no one would welcome him because he was a convict. On page 5, the quote is, "The boy came back with a paper. The host unfolded it. Then he took a step towards the traveler. 'Monsieur,' he said, 'I cannot receive you.'"
Thanks, Maya. Our third connection between Syria and Les Mis is war.
Obviously, this is nothing new that you didn't already know about ISIS in Syria, but many civilians in Syria don't support the views and tactics of ISIS. The full-blown civil war in Syria has killed over 220,000 people, half of whom are believed to be civilians. Bombings are destroying crowded cities and horrific civil rights violations are widespread. According to the Arab Opinion Project, taken November 11, 2014, it says 73% of Syrian refugees have a negative opinion on ISIS.
This connects to the book Les Mis. This is because in the book, Marius' grandfather, Monsieur Gillenmore, did not support the father of Marius. Marius' father's name was Colonel Baron Pontmercy, who had a big involvement in the Napoleon army during the French Revolution. Marius was mad at his grandfather for lying about who his dad was and what he did. On page 178, it says, "Your father, I am your father, my father," resumed Marius with downcast eyes and a stern manner, was a humble and heroic man who served the Republic in France gloriously, who was great in the greatest history that men have ever made. This is more than M. Gillenmore could listen to. At the word Republic, he rose, or rather sprang to his feet. Every one of the words which Marius had pronounced the effect upon the old royalist's face of blast from a bellows upon burning coal.
Our last example for the night is the connection between refugees in Syria and why they left home, and Jean Valjean not being able to stay one place for too long in fear of being caught and sent back to prison.
A story from Telstar TV tells the struggle of a mother of 4 kids, forced to leave her home in fear because of the war. Amina never wanted to leave Syria, but she didn't have a choice. In 2012, the place she called home was hit by an airstrike and then destroyed by artillery fire. The 36-year-old Amina, her husband, and her 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, the oldest 14 and the youngest at 2, knowing only a life on the run, made it to the United States after lots of interviews and lots of paperwork.
This story connects to Les Mis because throughout the whole book, Jean Valjean is constantly having to flee his current home in fear of being caught by Javert and being sent back to the galleys. This quote from the book is where Marius goes to Jean Valjean's old residence and asks for him. Jean Valjean left town because Cosette with Cosette because he was getting suspicious about Marius and also knew Javert was in town. This is on page 200. The gentleman of the third floor moved, answered the porter. Marius tottered and said feebly, "Since when?" "Yesterday." "Where does he live now?" "I don't know anything about it."
Throughout this newscast, we have discussed the topics of prostitution, poverty, the refugee crisis, and war, and how all of these things relate to Syria and the book Les Mis.
Thank you for tuning in to News of the World.
See you next time.